my name is Antony Gemmell, and I'm a staff attorney in the Disability Justice Program at New York Lawyers for the Public Interest, or NYLPI. NYLPI is a nonprofit civil rights legal organization. We provide free legal representation to New Yorkers in the areas of disability justice, environmental justice, and health justice. NYLPI's Disability Justice Program works to ensure that people with disabilities have fair and equal access to government services, to housing, to education, and to all aspects of life. Fair housing is a right, and New York Lawyers for the Public Interest's Disability Justice Program works to ensure that people with disabilities have fair access to housing, and we represent people in disability discrimination cases. There are a number of laws that protect people with disabilities' right to fair housing. There is the Fair Housing Act, which is a federal law. There's the New York State Human Rights Law, and then there's the New York City Human Rights Law, which is the strongest of those laws. Under the New York City Human Rights Law, a disability includes any physical, medical, mental, or psychological impairment, or a record of that impairment. Disability discrimination can take many forms. It can be something overt, like a landlord refusing to renew your lease or to grant you a lease in the first place. It can also be denying what's called a reasonable accommodation. A reasonable accommodation is a change that a person with a disability needs to their home in order to enjoy the same rights of living in the home as a person without a disability enjoys. A reasonable accommodation might take any number of forms. It could be a policy change, for example, allowing an emotional support animal in a no pets building. It can also be a structural change, for example, installing a wheelchair ramp or installing grab bars in a bathroom. One important aspect of the New York City Human Rights Law is that it requires landlords to pay for reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities. In other parts of the country, a landlord has to allow a reasonable accommodation, but at the tenant's expense. In New York City, the landlord has to pay for the reasonable accommodation. So if an accommodation is something that's required, the landlord has to pay for it, pay for installing a wheelchair ramp, or pay for any other aspect of your request. If you need a reasonable accommodation for your disability, the first step is to request the accommodation from your landlord. We recommend that you do that in writing so that you have proof that you've made your request. When you make your request, you should state exactly what it is that you're requesting and also explain why that request is linked to your disability. If you want to, and if you feel comfortable doing so, you can include medical documentation explaining your disability and why the reasonable accommodation is necessary, but you don't have to include that information if you don't want to. In some cases, NYLPI can write reasonable accommodation requests for our clients. Hopefully, your landlord will see your request and grant it, but if that's not the case, if your landlord denies your reasonable accommodation request or completely ignores it, which is also very common, then you should contact NYLPI. You can call us at 212-244-4664. That's 212-244-4664. And we can provide you advice and potentially represent you. New York Lawyers for the Public Interest does not charge its clients for advice or representation.